Listen. So Five Nights at Freddy's has easily been one of the most ripped off series, from Hulu's short film Hug, where we see an employee just walk over a pizza with a robot snatch a kid, Willy's, where Nick Cage takes him down one by one, leaving him speechless, and even Chuck E. Cheese himself, who's copy-pasting the aesthetic for a Halloween special. Come on, Charles. But after waiting for this movie since 2015, people have been so amped for it that they were duking it out in the theater, looking like animatronics. Blumhouse has said already that there's a trilogy in the works, and they even got to the point where they pulled up Magna Carta Jay-Z and allegedly, reportedly, supposedly already made back their money with that Peacock deal and pre-sales, so there's supposed to be a lot in store. Now, personally, I've never lost at Five Nights at Freddy's, mainly because I never played Five Nights at Freddy's, so this is a complete newbie review from a movie fan. Like, finding out that this wasn't just a security guard working at a haunted Chuck E. Cheese's, but a series that has the craziest backstory, had me trying to keep up and following it like...
Orange is for blue.
What?
Black is for orange. Yellow is for green. Green is for red, and red is for yellow.
So I did not know what the FNAF was going on. It turns out that there are spin-offs, a trilogy of novels, a cookbook, a MatPat series. It's so in-depth that people even said that the movie isn't meant for movie fans or gamers, but for the lore keepers. And that said, I think the playlists I was listening to were a little bit more interesting than the movie. Let me explain.
This stuff for real?
Some people think so.
So the movie opens up with a security guard closing up before getting sliced up after being trapped inside this jigsaw bear trap. And it wasn't until after the movie that I heard this was actually supposed to be Markiplier.
Okay, all right.
We then meet Mike, who lives with his sister, who he's raising after losing his parents, looking more tired than Peter Parker after fighting the Green Goblin. But if you pay close attention, you'll notice that there's a little Easter egg here on the dresser, with his clock saying 6 a.m., since that's the time he needs to wake up. At the moment, he's working as mall security, eating froyo all day, until he notices some suspicious activity when a little boy gets rushed off by a man, causing Mike to literally spring into action, beating him up like a good fella, only for it to turn out that it was the kid's father, so Mike gets fired. Since he's on the verge of getting evicted, he ends up taking an interview for this sketchy job as a night shift security for an abandoned pizza shop, or else he's risking losing the custody of his sister Abby, who's always drawing pictures and drawing up nonsense, because some of the stuff this girl says is really sketchy.
Sitting on my friend.
Yeah, time to go. We learned that ever since his brother went missing, his mother passed, and his father just dipped since he couldn't handle it, leaving him to take care of his sister alone. That is until his aunt realizes that she can make some foster money on the side if she snatches her from him.
This degenerate.
She also has this lawyer dude who's always just awkwardly sitting around in all of the scenes. Like, this guy's retainer must be her leftovers. I did like how Abby's teacher, though, supported him by telling Mike that his sister does look up to him and that he is the better guardian, even being the one to convince him to take the job for Abby. Night 1 ends up being so easy that it's almost like getting paid to play video games, and after going through the tutorial, he learns about these animatronics that can self-charge, and even suits up to check out the rest of the game map and all the character screens. Because he's on those pills, he ends up knocking out and gets an extension to that reoccurring dream that we've been seeing, where now he sees these little kids in the woods who act all creepy. That alone would have been enough for me to say, forget the 5 nights, I'm gone by morning 1.
I do intend on paying you.
I know where you live.
I mean, for now. The thing with Max the babysitter is that she really wants a ring. And even though Mike's always late, at least she knows he has a job since she has a job. Problem is, her scummy brother has a deal going on with the scummy aunt where they're trying to find evidence that'll make Mike lose custody.
You give us $2,000.
That's it?
1,000.
Before they leave the diner, they make a plan to go trash Freddy's in hopes of getting Mikey fired and for them to stay in the franchise. But something tells me that waiter's definitely gonna come back for a future sequel. But that's just a theory. On night 2, he ends up meeting the local cop Vanessa, who likes to check up on abandoned pizza places, and she gives him the explainer on the place and how kids used to go missing here all the time. Then the next morning, the robbers arrive at Red Dawn and trash the place as if the Phillies just lost the series. Or won the series. After messing it up a bit, they start getting picked off one by one as they're getting wrecked by these animatronics. Sadly, most of them happen off-screen or happen super fast, except for the one that we saw in the trailer and was the most brutal, with Max looking into one of their mouths only for a hand to pop out and slash her in half. Due to his sleeping pills, Mike's the one who ends up getting in trouble for the daybreak, even though he's working the night shift. Not to mention she was distracting him while locking up. But after venting to Vanessa about it, we find out that she's not just a cop, but a doctor, because she's throwing away his prescriptions.
No more sleeping on the job.
The reason he's been having a lot of these nightmares is because he blames himself for his brother's abduction, since he was supposed to be watching him when he went out into the woods, and right at the end, all he was able to catch a glimpse of was the car that got away.
And though the dreamer remains asleep, he walks through memory no longer a passenger, but an active participant.
So pretty much this dude is trying to incept his own mind by taking these sleeping pills that'll force him to have that same dream/memory so he can uncover the secret detail he needs to find his brother's killer. Boy, this ain't Terabithia. Like, that's way too ridiculous to believe. The demonic animatronics then continue to haunt him as they keep appearing in his dreams as kids who keep warning him. But they also kind of remember that he was talking smack earlier in the movie.
My friend says you're an idiot.
At least I'm real.
And here's where I felt a little bit of a tonal clash as an outside movie fan. You know, I always thought these robots were supposed to be evil at first, and then slowly as the lore built up, the tragedy of what they were was supposed to come out. But they kind of pulled a Halo, and they just assumed that you've been playing along the whole time. Instead of giving you that setup experience, they just rushed it, which is crazy because it's supposed to be a trilogy. It also switches between feeling like a drama to a thriller with jump scares for kids, because it'll go from a super depressing reality about a family that crumbled after a child went missing. And then a jumping killer cupcake will blast across the screen. Like, even the goriest parts happen during the daylight, with there being more pasta sauce than there is blood in the movie.
Mike didn't tell me he had a daughter.
Gross.
No, Abby's my sister.
Well, he didn't tell me he had a sister either.
Damn, lady, you want his license and registration too? Since the babysitter's adventures have ended, it now becomes bring your sister to work day. And the more you think about it, Abby wasn't in the family photo, meaning the parents did have her after the abduction. Sadly, hoping that it'd fix the marriage, only for them to disappear, leaving her brother to take care of her. And yet she just knows how to trigger him all the time.
Good night.
It's like we're camping.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Now, if you pause on the employees of the month and zoom in, you see that it's a bunch of YouTubers who I personally don't recognize, followed by a bunch more cameos from YouTubers who I do recognize. And that's when you realize that it's pretty much a movie for people who've watched people play the game. That's why they cast the fans.
I miss you guys.
But I know some critics who watch movies through explainer videos, so yeah, we're in this new economy. Plus, you can tell that fans are just happy they live in a world where the film got made.
You wouldn't understand.
On to night 3, and this man keeps snoozing, causing him to have new nightmares at Freddy's, since everything that happens in his dream world turns out to happen in real life. Surprising to me, Abby ends up becoming BFFs with the animatronics, and by night 4, they're throwing a whole pizza party with some dance-alongs, and the only reason they stop is because she gets accidentally zapped.
You can do whatever you want with your own life, but if you ever bring Abby back here again, I will shoot you.
Ma'am, weren't you just the one who said...
I think we could use the tables for the fort.
Before night 5, Mike does the scariest thing in the movie, and that's call the aunt because he's worried that he can't care for Abby. And that's when he goes back to sleep on the job and meets with these creepy kids who decide to make him a deal by saying that they'll return his little brother back, but only if he trades in his little sister. And man, that's like offering a car but taking away the wheels. He wakes up after almost saying yes and is stuck in that bear trap before making it out last minute, only because that guard from the intro loosened up the bolts, or else he'd be screwed. Honestly, he really should have died here to the Fox, but they just did that cop-out where it cuts to black. This movie ain't scary, but boo. Freddy then pulls up to their house like he's Sniper Wolf, killing the aunt and then tormenting Corey Kenshin more than YouTube does.
Oh my goodness.
After journeying to the center of the pizzeria, Mike wakes up in a room with Vanessa, who turns out knew about the animatronics the whole time, and even the plans that they have for Abby. She then goes on to explain that her father is the guy who's been running this place and abducting kids, including Mike's brother, and then somehow stuffing them into these animatronics?
I tried to warn you. I really did try, in my own way.
Ma'am, you need to arrest yourself. Mike rushes back and sneaks in through the vents, playing a little game of Slenderman as he shockingly takes them down one by one like it's a piece of cake, including Chica, who, I don't know who everyone's favorite is, but Chica does the funniest thing with that side eye, so I'm gonna put her as number 1. Then we get the big reveal. It ends up being one of the 8 people on the cast. While he looks a little shaggy, Steven unmasks himself to reveal that he is the mastermind behind it all, doing the whole ghost face wipe, and knowing that he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for these kids. His cop daughter finally decides to stand up to him for stuffing these kids and actually shoots him, but again, I think they should have saved this reveal for later on to make it scarier.
You had one job. One.
Keep him in the dark.
After stabbing his own daughter, Abby has to draw a picture in order to talk to these animatronics since they don't understand words. They only know how to play Pictionary to communicate. Something that you noticed the teacher mentioned earlier on a rewatch.
You know, pictures hold tremendous power for children. Before we learn to speak, images are the most important tool we have for understanding the world around us.
But weren't they already speaking? Didn't this boy just call a cab? The robot kids then set off this spring trap, crushing him in his suit and dragging him away for a sequel.
I always come back.
Bruh, I just met you. A couple of days later, Mike pays a visit to the hospital. For whatever reason, at first I thought it'd be Matthew Lillard in the full suit on the gurney, but it's a recovering Vanessa, as Steven ends up being locked up in the storage by John Kramer Jr., setting up a return when you hear the words, "Come find me," over the credits.
What do you want for dinner?
Spaghetti. With meatballs.
Then she saw that plate and said, "Never mind, I want the pizza." In the end, Mike and Abby learn to get along, as he's able to keep custody of his sister since all their aunts are dead and all their friends aren't real. That said, how did Freddy lose to Megan as the best horror robot of this year?
It's insane, right?
Thank you all for watching this video. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below in the comment section. It was interesting to hear the behind the scenes and how they had the Jim Henson puppets working on this because when I didn't believe it at first, but they released a statement having to say that they weren't CGI, and when I saw the behind the scene videos, they look pretty cool. I know that they had a point where they would have to take breaks because the gears would overheat and they didn't want to lose kids in the making of this movie, but there would be points where sparks would fly.
We were rolling and I heard someone quietly and calmly say, "Foxy's arm is on fire." And I looked over and one of the servos had been going for quite some time and it overheated, which happens sometimes.
There was a little fire. Now, it did not burst into a flame.
There was some smoke.
There was some smoke.
Also, as a newbie, it was really interesting to learn about the creator of the game, Scott, who started off as a Christian game developer before switching to survival horror, which is super Christian, because, that means he really had kids praying before bed. It's also really inspiring to see, he made that as a life shift, way later on, and the fact that he came on top and created a cultural defining series is, really inspirational. Only thing against Steve Jobs because of how he spent his money, but, at least the series is in trusted hands.
Were you familiar with the games at all when this project came along?
I became really familiar with the games as I heard about the project.
Other than that, I'm curious to know your thoughts on this movie as a movie fan, a gamer, a follower of Christ. And until next time, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and hit that bell so that Balloon Boy leaves that corner of your room.